Hello everyone, welcome to Triangle of Fence. This is Monish. As always, I'm joined by Nishant. We are just a couple of weeks away from the start of the NBA season. In fact, we're just a couple of days away from the start of the preseason. This is the smallest gap between the end of a season and the start of a season ever. But not if you're players who haven't played in an entire year. KD hasn't touched the ball in 18 months. Golden State Warriors haven't played in a year. So, is it really the shortest time of the year? I don't think so. It's if you exclude Miami and the Lakers, I think everyone had a pretty decent rest time. We'll talk all about that. We'll talk actually about the list of players. We have a list of players who are returning from injury or who haven't played in a long, long time. We actually forgot all about them, and we haven't seen them play. I mean, look at Steph Curry. We haven't seen him play. We'll see. We'll see.
You
We'll talk all
forgot
about
about
that.
Steph Curry.
Yeah, I haven't seen him play in like what, a year now.
Don't you live in the Bay Area? Shouldn't
It's not
really-
like he keep driving around my house all the time.
No, I'm saying after saying you forgot about Steph Curry, you might not want to step out. COVID notwithstanding, you might not want to step out.
But yeah, that's what I wanted to talk about. I mean, I'm
Right.
super excited to see these guys back, and I have a list of 5 players for you. We'll analyze how they fare, what's their floor and what's their ceiling, what can they do to maintain their greatness, legacy, or will it all go down the drain? All right. So the first player I have for you actually is Kevin Durant. He's not played in 18 months. He fell down. He broke his. I mean, he tore his Achilles during the NBA Finals against the Toronto Raptors. Until then, he was shooting lights out. He was going 44% from three. He was a two-time Finals MVP as well until then, and looked well set to become the third. And then he fell down, and then it all went downhill for the Golden State Warriors. They lost the final. He moved. He moved out to the Brooklyn Nets, and Golden State Warriors were irrelevant last year. They won 15 games because Clay was out, Steph was out, so the entire franchise went down. But forget about that. Let's talk about Kevin Durant. What do you expect from him this season? Is he going to be the same player that he was? While he sat out on the sidelines, Giannis went and won 2 MVPs. LeBron went and won a title. KD kind of got pushed from being the best player in the league to probably 5, 10, I don't know where. So what do you expect from KD this season?
I think the answer to KD. First of all, let's not act like KD is not big time. He's one of the faces of the league, and he has been for a while, right? And
Mm-hmm.
uh, the NBA, nobody really cares about reality on the court more than we care about narratives, more than we care about the debates we have among friends, the debates we tune into on TV, the debates we give the people on YouTube, and so on and so forth. And narratives really make the sport fun, any sport, right? Now, in that narrative, we saw all of last year. The NBA has a heavy recency bias, at least the ecosystem does. And we saw all of last year Kawhi Leonard being pushed as the heir apparent to the throne. There's that New Balance commercial. He's driving around with a crown keychain. LA is his city. It wasn't even close to being his city. It's closer to being Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic's city than it is Kawhi's city. But that was the narrative that was pushed through. And why? Because if there's no alternative to kind of the Thanos of the league, which is LeBron James, and if you don't really have a viable alternative, then the league loses its competitive sheen. And you have then the kind of problem that Formula One had when Michael Schumacher, it was just a joke really, where there are 17 races and he's on the podium on every single one of them, and 14 of those or 13 were wins, whatever. So narratives are important. Kawhi blew that last season. They tried putting Giannis in that bracket. Regular season kills it. Postseason, yes, he doesn't quite have the team to do it, but he also doesn't have the skill set yet to be that guy. And kind of, because LeBron had a shit team and he carried them to the finals in the East. Giannis is in the East. He's not even in the stacked West. So all of these narratives kind of fell flat at some level or the other. And all of the recent MVPs outside of Durant and Steph Curry, you look at Harden, you look at Westbrook, you look at Giannis, all of them fizzled out in the postseason, right? So we need a viable alternative to LeBron. We need somebody to pit against LeBron and say, this guy can legit be a part of the argument that somebody's better than LeBron. And that's KD, and that's the ceiling really. Because chip, yes, you would expect them to settle for nothing less than the chip with the kind of squad that they have and the kind of players and personnel that they have. But really the bigger picture for the league, for the fans and for the ecosystem is, can he establish himself firmly as the greatest player in basketball. And you'll have enough people saying that if he wins the finals. Because if he wins
Mm-hmm.
the finals, I'd largely expect him to be finals MVP over Kyrie.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really the ceiling. The floor, do anything less than the finals is a debacle for them. You can
Mm-hmm.
give reasons, and some of them would be valid. First time putting this squad together, team chemistry. They had to do it despite having Kyrie in the squad. In the squad, but uh, anything less than the finals would be pretty bad for the team. Anything less than the conference finals would be straight up disaster for the
Mm-hmm.
Brooklyn Nets. Unless somebody gets injured, in which case, what can you do? But if they're fit, that's really what they're looking at. But that's the impact of KD's season this season. Will I expect him to be back? Short answer to that. Injuries like this, you'll hear everyone tell you nobody's really come back from an injury like this and dominate, except maybe Brianna Stewart in the women's game, but nobody
Mm-hmm.
in the men's game at least. Dominique, Kobe, Achilles injuries, ACL, you don't really come back as the same kind of player after these, right? But there are two counter arguments to that. One of them, and everyone's made this, is Kevin Durant's game really dependent on that athleticism? Not to
Right.
say he wasn't athletic, but does his game depend that much on his
Mm-hmm.
athleticism? Maybe a fifth of his game does, but largely no. He can still be an effective player. But the one thing that we're kind of not factoring in is sports medicine and diet and rehab and all of these things have advanced leaps and bounds over the years. And not just in recovery players, that it also helps players condition themselves much better so they're set up to recover a lot better. So it'll be
Mm-hmm.
interesting to see fitness wise in what shape he comes back. But if it's going to affect some part of his game, like if we get back some fraction of the Durant that we had, say 80%, 90%, I'd expect the large chunk of that deficit to go from his defense, not his offense. I think
Mm-hmm.
offensively, he's still going to be a force. It might take away from his post game, but when you're Kevin Durant, you can shoot from pretty much anywhere. You're a 7-footer that can dribble. You're pretty unstoppable. So I'd
Mm-hmm.
expect his defense to suffer, if anything at all, not his offense.
All right, so that was KD, and he also said that he'll be playing some minutes at small forward and also at center this season. So he's going to be shuffling across those two positions, and it'll be interesting to see how they go because they have a new squad. They have multiple players to play in a single position. So it'll be interesting to see with the new coach how KD will fit in. He's also going to be the leader of the group. I think that was a problem that he had at the Warriors, right? While he
Yeah.
was the best player there, it was still Curry's team. Clay was still more loved than probably KD was. So
Yeah.
he was pretty much the third wheel there. And while at Brooklyn, it's his city now. He's the leader of the group. Kyrie looks up to him. It's going to be a new challenge for him.
Yeah, I like the KD at the 5 thing, but I think it's largely going to be against small ball teams. I can't really see him.
Mm-hmm.
Why would you waste Kevin Durant in a position where you have to largely bump shoulders time and time again with other giants? Like,
Mm-hmm.
imagine if they're playing Philly. Kevin
Right.
Durant's playing the 5. He's just going to get hammered physically.
Mm-hmm.
Forget about whether he comes out on top defensively or not. It's just going to be a physical hammering from Embiid and Dwight Howard, who are among two of the strongest men in the league.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think that'll. I think that's something they'll resort to, like the Lakers did last season when they played the Houston Rockets, who were
Right.
micro small. It was like a high school team almost, where everyone's not full grown yet. So what the Lakers did was they pretty much throughout the series benched JaVale McGee and Dwight Howard, and they did play Anthony Davis at the 5 or even
Right.
Marquise Morris sometimes. Why Anthony Davis? Because versatile, stretch big, can defend the perimeter, also shoot the three, all of those good things. I think that's largely where Kevin Durant will fit in, but that's an interesting role.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. Moving on to the next player, actually, I had John Wall on my list. Uh, Unlike Kevin Durant, he didn't miss one season. He missed two seasons. The last time he played was in December 2018.
Yeah,
The
tough.
top draft pick in 2010, five-time All-Star team, and all of that. So great player. A lot of upside for him if he just manages to play through the season. And
Yeah.
I think the ceiling for him will be to bring the Rockets to the playoffs, given the situation they are in with no team, no Harden or
Yeah,
Harden not cooperating and all of that. But John Wall, what do you have to make of him?
he's a Russell Westbrook light,
Mm-hmm.
slightly shave off some of Russell Westbrook's abilities. And you have John Wall. It's pretty much the same player, same style, almost identical numbers, couple of years younger, right? Russell Westbrook, however, is a whole lot fitter than John Wall. These are major injuries. When you miss 2 years, you really don't know what version of the player you get back. Again,
Right.
I hope modern medicine gives us the best version of John Wall possible. For his sake, I'd actually want to see if Harden is traded away
Mm-hmm.
in exchange for some real value. What kind of a team can they build in Houston? Because that's something new, that's exciting. If he has to sit in Houston and make that mess work with the disgruntled Harden, I'm afraid it's going to be a bad situation with the first time coach who's a first time head coach. Well, he's been an assistant for a while, but I think there's just too much turmoil there to be a positive organization right now. Uh, we really don't know what version of John Wall we get back. I'm hoping it's John Wall at his best, which is all star. But that's about
Mm-hmm.
all he is. I don't. He's not an MVP candidate. He's never been. He's nothing more than an all-star in the sense that he's not the kind of player that, at least so far, that we've seen dominate postseason, then kind of win series on his own strength. That's not him, at least not so far. It'll be interesting to see if there is that side to him. Uh, but for his sake, I think the best scenario here is unless there's a middle ground where Harden can stay and be happy with staying.
Mm-hmm.
I think the best case for him would be to move Harden, because a team with less superstars is better than a team with more superstars, but all of them being disgruntled.
Right. So the scary thing about John Wall is that he's a kind of, unlike Kevin Durant, he's the kind of player who actually would be impacted by the injury just because of the style of play that
Yeah,
he brings into the game, right? Someone who runs into the rim, kind of a Russell Westbrook light, like you said,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
So
Can't shoot deep.
his injuries are gonna be more
Yeah,
substantial and kind of scary for him, that he doesn't aggravate it or kind of put a full stop to his career.
yeah. I agree. What about that Rockets defense too? Because they gave away Covington.
Yeah.
James Harden doesn't defend, and
Mm-hmm.
that's assuming he even wants to play.
Mm-hmm.
John Wall wasn't the greatest defender ever, but he's not bad. But after injury, what's that going to be like? They've taken some pretty solid body blows in defense. And Demarcus Cousins, that's a whole other black box question mark again on fitness. So not looking very good for the Houston Rockets. But I hope to see, if nothing else, it'll be exciting basketball if John Wall's at his fittest best.
Right. And since you mentioned Demarcus Cousins, he was my next player on the list. Let's go right into him. He had not one, not two, but three injuries.
Yeah,
He injured his Achilles, his tore his quad, and then he
yeah,
injured his ACL as well. So what do you expect from this guy? He's not played much since 2016. Since 2016, here's a stat: he's played just 158 games over the last 4 years, and he's changed five teams.
yeah,
He was supposed to be on the Lakers last season, so unfortunate for him that he missed out on the chip because of injury. He was supposed to be on the Warriors the previous season. He did play in the finals as well, but
right.
didn't really have an impact.
Yeah,
Like we all know how it went down. So Demarcus Cousins, again at the Rockets, pretty interesting trade that one as well. I expect the Rockets to utilize him as a sixth man actually, because they got in Chris Wood, who I think would start for them,
right.
but he'll be quite a presence whenever he plays, with given his physicality and
Yeah.
the physical presence under the rim that he gets.
Mhm.
But what do you expect from Demarcus Cousins? Do you think he can get out there and revive his career?
I think it's going to be about expectations because
Mm-hmm.
revive in the sense, is he going to be back to being a superstar in this league? I don't think so. I think the league's passed him by a bit.
Mm-hmm.
Also, his skill set the league's kind of passed by. What's expected of a superstar big is a whole lot more than what Demarcus Cousins brings to the table. But he is still an elite, was an elite in the paint scorer and a pretty phenomenal rim protector.
Mm-hmm.
Now the challenge for him, and I think you're right, I think he should be utilized in a bench role unless he can stay fit long enough to prove that he's a definitive starter. I think it's off the bench for him. And this reminds me a lot of how Dwight Howard's career went by, though I don't think DeMarcus Cousins at his best was anywhere close to the level of awesomeness that Dwight Howard achieved. But Dwight Howard had to reconcile with the fact that he's not that number one draft pick, league leading NBA Finals superstar anymore.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
He's not an MVP candidate anymore. He's not a three-time DPOY anymore. Which means he's going to have to reconcile with the fact that he needs to play a role on a team. He's that guy now. He's that veteran role player, mentor kind of thing. It took him a while, really, to figure that out and to come to terms with it. And he wasted a part of his prime too, just bouncing around. Until finally, he seemed to have humbled himself down last season. He was grateful for the opportunity, and boy, did he make the most of it. He won his first chip. That's going to be Demarcus Cousins' challenge. He's
Mm-hmm.
not that superstar that he was in Sacramento. He's not that guy that people were so excited to see how he pairs with Anthony Davis at the Pelicans. He's none of those things anymore. Too many injuries, bad press. It's just not a very favorable picture that's cast of Demarcus Cousins. So if he can marry his goals to the role that he can plausibly get and stay fit, I think we're
Mm-hmm.
looking at a very good prolonged career for
Mm-hmm.
Demarcus Cousins. Fitness, of course, assuming fitness is on his side. But if not, he's
Right.
going to struggle and he's going to bounce, because if you expect to be that superstar, but you're not that superstar anymore,
Mm-hmm.
and and moreover, you can't really even stay fit, he's going to have problems. So it's largely down to his attitude. Can he bounce back? Yeah, if bounce back means can he play regularly, stay fit, and own a role, yes. Can he be that superstar again? Incredibly unlikely. It'll be the comeback story of the year if that happens.
All right. So that was Demarcus Cousins. So what do you think his ceiling is? What would be considered a successful season for him? Now that you said that he has to set his expectations straight and kind of accept a bench role, not the main guy anymore. What do you think he would be happy with this season, or what do you think his expectation should be for the season?
See, that's the thing. I know what he would be happy with, but what should be his definition of success
Mm-hmm.
is if he can do what the coach and the org expect of him. And if that expectation is give us 20 minutes, uh, 12 points, 8 rebounds a game,
Mm-hmm.
couple of blocks here and there, and a solid defensive presence, then that's what it is. I think his success right now is to play a regular run of games, be it off the bench or as a starter, and to fulfill the role that his team expects him to fulfill.
Right.
That's step one. And not dictate terms and demand that the ball flow through him and all of that. That's not going to happen. So success
Mm-hmm.
for him is just staying fit enough to play out a whole regular season at the very least, and match the expectations of the coach and the org. That's all he has to do.
All right, so that was a number three player, Demarcus Cousins, also at the Houston Rockets, like John Wall.
Hmm.
I hope they both stay fit, or else Houston Rockets are in super trouble this season,
Yeah.
given that they have no players.
Yeah,
They have
we've
no
seen this
players.
movie. It'll be Golden State from last year, basically.
Yeah, pretty much. The next player I had on my list was a kind of forgotten man, Blake Griffin. Remember him? He's just 31. I was surprised because
Oh, yeah, I
he seems
remember
to
him.
he seems to have been around forever, and he's just 31, but he's kind of been irrelevant in the last couple of seasons since his move to Detroit Pistons. He actually played a lot of games for Detroit Pistons in the 2019 season,
Yeah.
and actually took them to the playoffs, where he missed the playoffs, but he took them to the playoffs. Last season, he just could play 18 games, and then he faded away, and then Pistons were not invited to the bubble, so we haven't seen him play from a long, long time. Now, the high flying athlete that he is, it was obvious that age would take a toll on him. And although
Yeah.
he's just 31, I think he's past his prime where he was at the Clippers and he was flying around and
Yeah, I
dunking the
think so.
ball.
Yeah.
So, yeah, what do you expect from Blake Griffin? Can he, does he have it in him to take the Pistons to another playoff series?
The way he plays, even Blake Griffin at his best, like if you bring Blake Griffin from when he was dominant in the Clippers
Mm-hmm.
and drop him
Mm-hmm.
into this present day Detroit team, even then the team's not set up even remotely for success.
Mm-hmm.
With Derrick Rose, I think that's an interesting pick and roll, but it's not going to be lethal by any stretch. And there are far better combos in the league, even in the
Mm-hmm.
conference in the East. That's one. Two, he's coming back off of an injury. And this, unlike Kevin Durant, is a player that heavily depends on his athleticism to get his points. He's still going to be strong. He developed a pretty good post game. He's a good defender, can rebound. Um, and with the offense largely flowing through him, you're looking at best a 25 and 10 player across the length of the season. But what does that really mean, really? I think, again, for him, the target should be just to come back,
Mm-hmm.
regain some of that form, get close to that 25-10 metric, and see where you can go the next year. Because I think slowly he will have to transition into a role player, and he'll be an
Mm-hmm.
excellent role player.
Mm-hmm.
But that's really where it's headed for him. He doesn't shoot the three very well, so again, he's not really a stretch big. Like a Kevin Love can prolong his career as a 3-and-D guy, rebounder, veteran. I don't think that's too much of an option either for Blake Griffin. So nothing really that positive to look forward to, honestly, from Blake Griffin. I think his best days are behind him, sadly. And
Mm-hmm.
boy, were those good days, because I loved watching Clippers highlights and Lob City with Chris Paul and um, Blake Griffin. And it was so much fun. But uh, I think those days are behind him. And the ceiling is just staying fit. If there is the playoffs, that's a lifetime achievement. With
Mm-hmm.
that team, that's a big time achievement.
Here's an interesting thought that I had for Blake Griffin. If he manages to stay fit and puts an impressive performance after performance, it need not necessarily translate into wins, but if he performs, could he be an important trade asset for the Pistons where teams are looking for someone like a big player like him? He could be an important role player, like you said, right? And teams that
Yeah.
are going to make it to the playoffs and say by the end of Feb, March,
Yeah.
that before the trade deadline, that he could be an important trade asset at one of the big clubs.
He could, but those will have to be clubs that already have a big man that can score for fun.
Mm-hmm.
Like the Lakers, sure. Bucks, maybe. But again, because of his limitation of not being able to shoot the three,
Mm-hmm.
that rules out a lot of teams that need their bigs to be stretch bigs. Maybe an Atlanta, he would probably fit in. But
Mm-hmm.
teams that need their bigs to be stretch bigs because their whole offense is predicated on spacing, it's not going to
Mm-hmm.
work. So a lot of playoff teams he's ruled out straight away because of that. But I can see some teams being interested, but he's on a fat salary though. He's going to be difficult to trade right now. I think it's his role playing days will come in once his free agency rolls around, and then he'll
Mm-hmm.
have to look around and see if he can get at least a half decent contract and not settle for a veteran minimum. And that's probably the biggest outcome of his season is if he can prove that he is still elite at a level where he deserves better than the veteran minimum. That should be a win for him. Like Rondo last season was on a veteran minimum, if I'm not
Right.
wrong, and this
Right.
season he got paid because he proved himself, and that's really what his best case scenario is.
Right. And he's always a constant injury threat as well. So I hope he remains fit because
Yeah,
excluding the 2019 season, he's just played 76 games in the previous three seasons. So
right.
including last season, the 2018 and 2017, he
Yeah,
just played 76 games. So I hope he remains fit because he'll be an interesting, exciting player to watch actually whenever he gets the ball and dunking around and high flying. Although those days are past him now, but always
yeah,
a
man.
great.
That's really the sad part, right? Imagine that Detroit team if both Derrick Rose and
Oh
Blake Griffin were in
man.
their athletic prime. Oof. Yeah,
And the last player on my list is probably one of the biggest names in basketball. I haven't forgotten him, Steph Curry. He did make a brief appearance last season, just played 4 games before he fell and broke his hand.
he lit that arena up when he came back, though.
And when he came back, Warriors, who had just won 15 games in the season,
Yeah,
were like they were winning the championship because Steph was there. He
yeah,
was doing all his ball handling
yeah.
skills
All of the
and
tricks were out.
shooting from
Yeah,
three and did everything in that 25, 27 minutes that he played and he lit that arena up. So I think Steph Curry's presence is very important, not just to the Warriors, but to the league because he's an entertainer. He's a walking, talking entertainment channel, right? And his injury, probably the broken hand, is probably the least serious of all the other players I mentioned. So him lasting physically, I'm not too worried about. I just hope he gets his touch back and can shoot those threes. And he did show that he was capable of doing that in that brief appearance that we saw him.
yeah.
What would be Steph's ceiling for the season?
Ceiling chip. I mean, any
But is that
multiple
even
time.
possible? I mean, what would be a realistic ceiling? I would say, given that
I think at
Warriors
the
are weakened
yeah
without Clay Thompson now.
at second
So,
round playoffs, even with the team that
mm-hmm,
they have right now, you have Steph Curry, that org, that coach. Second round
mm-hmm,
playoffs should be your at the very least. Like if the Houston Rockets can do it, the Warriors should absolutely do it.
mm-hmm,
That's one. Two, there's an outside chance this team can get to the finals. At very, very slim odds, not even remotely close, especially in the West.
mm-hmm.
But that's like if I have to commit to a ceiling, including everything that's even remotely possible, finals. I still don't see them winning the chip because if they come out of the West, they're going to face Nets, maybe
Yeah,
Philly. They're not done adding. Maybe Boston, maybe uh, Milwaukee,
Miami.
and I don't fancy the chances against any of those teams. So
Mm-hmm,
Um, so that's the ceiling. The bare minimum is get to the playoffs, even without Clay Thompson. If you have Steph Curry back and you got a really talented draft pick, very high up, that's a lottery pick. You
mm-hmm,
have Draymond back. You have a lot of your core back. You have a former number one pick in Andrew Wiggins, who that pick was an aberration, but he is a top 10 pick level player. And when he's
mm-hmm.
not when there's when the pressure of being the number one face of the franchise isn't on Wiggins, I think he can be a decent squad player with Steph Curry around. And I'm
Mhm.
pretty sure they're not done adding either. I think they have enough space to create one more free agent, maybe trade package signing. So that's still a pretty decent lineup, honestly. With Steph, with Wiggins, with Draymond, with Wiseman, that's a good lineup. A playoff team for sure. So at least second round of the playoffs, if not further, like the slimmest of chances that this team makes the final, kind of like the underdog of underdogs, like Miami
Mhm.
from last season, whole square.
And he seems to be the kind of guy who would enjoy these challenges, right? From being
Yeah,
the scrawny little guy who went seventh in the draft, nobody expected him to become the top player in the league, only player to win the unanimous
yeah.
MVP as well. That's how much he's dominated the league. So, uh, different role, different time in his career now, if I can put it that way.
It's
But
an opportunity though, because the one criticism everyone's had of Steph Curry,
mhm, mhm,
if there were detractors, their detraction was he was never Finals MVP. The
right,
first time around it was Iguodala. The next two times it was Durant. And when Durant wasn't around and Iggy wasn't at his best, they dropped a 3-1 lead. So
yep,
there is, at some level, a question on his postseason leadership and his ability to eke out wins
mhm,
in a crunch series.
mhm,
There are no distractions, no fallback options right now in that roster. Like it's him or bust. Because you take away
right.
Steph Curry, who's there? Eric
That's what happened last
Pascal,
season.
exactly. Eric Pascal, Andrew Wiggins, Draymond, Wiseman, whatever. Not going to happen unless Wiseman turns out to be the next Shaq. It's not going to happen. So A, there are no excuses. B, there are no supplements that can help him out. This team will do only as well as Steph Curry makes them do. So in a way, it's going to be a fun challenge to see Steph
Mhm.
Curry. Like, what can he alone do to a franchise that would otherwise be a bust without him?
Right. And looks like the NBA also have trust in Steph Curry to rise up to the occasion, given that they've
Primetime
given,
games,
yeah, primetime
it's
games. They've
Steph
faced
Curry,
the
man.
Nets right up. They faced Bucks on Christmas Day. So
Yeah,
it's going to be interesting. I really hope Steph is back because, like I said, he's a walking, talking entertainment reel and
sure.
does those flash
Yeah, he was
pullovers and
throwing no-look shovel passes and stuff when he came back last season.
exactly,
Yeah,
and he's lighting it up. I think that's one thing that the Warriors will miss this season is having the crowds because I think they have one of the most entertaining crowds in the whole league. I really hope crowds can be back as soon as possible. Even a
sounds good.
portion of them, I think, will take it for now.
Mhm.
But for now, I think this was great. I think there are a few other players who are coming back from injury. I can remember Karl Anthony Towns hasn't played much last
Yeah.
season, so it'll be interesting to see how that young Minnesota Timberwolves uh, come back and make it count. They have the top draft pick there
Oh,
as
they're
well.
stacked. Yeah, yeah. Number one draft pick, D'Lo, who was
Yeah,
number two in his time, I think.
yeah,
And Carl Anthony Towns also a number one draft pick, if I'm not wrong, number one or two. He was a
right,
lottery pick anyway. So
right.
exciting young team. Yeah.
Exciting young team. So a lot of players coming back. So I don't really think it was a short preseason. In fact, it feels like it's been long that I've seen these players play. I'm super excited to get back.
Hmm.
Unless you're LeBron James or Jimmy Butler, you shouldn't be complaining about
Yeah. No doubt.
starting now.
Yeah.
So, but as always, I think this was great fun catching up and discussing this list of players who are going to make a comeback. And I'll talk to you tomorrow where we have a special guest.
Yeah. Yes, we do. Yes, we do. You can go ahead and announce. I think it's all confirmed now.
I think we'll keep the surprise factor on and we'll talk about it tomorrow.
Sounds good. There's like two people listening at this point.
Yep.
All right. All right, man.
All right,
Cheers.
for the two
Take
of
care.
you who are listening, cheers,
Thanks.
stay tuned, and come back tomorrow.